My guest today is Amit Mahajan. Amit is the founder of Proof of Play, an on-chain game studio and technology company building Pirate Nation, a fascinating on-chain game. We'll talk all about this today. Welcome to the show, Amit.
Really nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. Nice to meet you as well. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show. It would be super cool if you could please introduce yourself. Would love to hear some of your personal and professional backstory. Yeah, what have you been doing in the lead up to getting involved with, I guess, Web3, on-chain gaming, proof of play, and so on?
Sure. Yeah. I am I've been in the game industry and in crypto for a couple decades now. I got my start working at Epic Games, where I worked on the Unreal Engine and games for the Xbox 360, Gears of War, that series. After Epic, I worked on a game called Farmville. That was my first startup. We got bought by Zynga. Farmville ended up was a Facebook farming simulator. Ended up reaching about 300 million users, players, and did over $1 billion in revenue. After Farmville, after my time at Zynga, I left and started a couple other different ventures, all kind of in the gaming, virtual items type of space. I've always been a really active investor, invested in about 50 plus companies, many in the virtual reality, augmented reality space. Spent a lot of time looking at metaverse companies. And so kind of the culmination of all of these things of like virtual worlds, virtual items, gaming kind of led me to, crypto and what I've done there. In 2017, I started a company called Rarebits, which was an NFT marketplace, one of the first. We ran that for a few years before I stepped away, and then shortly after started Proof of Play. And Proof of Play is a fully on-chain game studio. It basically means that we build games that don't use servers. The games themselves are decentralized. They harness the power of blockchain as a distributed computing platform. And so, we're actually creating games that can run forever, can be sustained by the community, can be expanded by the community. It's actually a new type of game. It's a new type of, it's a new type of paradigm for gaming communities. And we're excited to just keep exploring the space, innovating, pushing the boundaries. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amit. Well, I'm fascinated though, because, you're one of these guys, you've been around for a while. So, as you've mentioned that you were, I think, one of the, co-creators of Farmville, spent time at Epic Games, working as an engineer on the Unreal Engine. Amazing. So what is it, Amit, that made you decide to move perhaps from, I guess, more traditional gaming or Web2 gaming or whatever you want to call it, into the Web3 / metaverse / on-chain space? Were you just simply bitten by the crypto bug, or you can just see that this is where the world is going? Just what's the kind of the context for your shift into Web3 and on-chain?
So I think there's two ways to answer this question. The first is kind of the acute pain, which was, Farmville, as mentioned, had hundreds of millions of players. In 2020, the game was shut down, and those players, had no recourse. They just they lost their investment, basically their time investment, their monetary investment. And I think that was just a real shame, right? Like I think that if these things were open source or open data, at least someone from the community could have perpetuated it, kept the game running. And it's just strange to me that a company, even though yes, there's a company that's creating the game, but the players made their own, right? By imbuing that universe and that game with life and culture and all the other things that come when you bring people together. And so there's a bit of no company should be able to rug pull in that way, And then the second is just more like it's just kind of more of a bigger kind of personal reason why I decided to get into crypto generally, which is that like every once in a while you have this experience with a new product or technology that's kind of like a jaw-dropping user experience, right? Like I remember the first time I used Uber and like I like stepped out of the car and I didn't pay. I was like, I'm like, oh wow, this is like a different thing, right? We have these like the first time I used an iPhone, I was like, oh, the touch screen is like clearly a better device, a better input mechanism. And so for me, with blockchain and with Ethereum specifically, it was the first time I wrote a smart contract and I deployed it, and I was like, oh, this is just going to exist forever now. There was this idea of permanence, this idea of ephemerality to the creation of something that's on chain, and I was like, oh, this is real. So for me, the reason to kind of shift from centralized games to on-chain games was entirely around this idea of like what happens when we push this idea to the extreme of true decentralization and truly, of like this, like of truly creating these permanent forever universes. And what happens when players know that, when everyone's in on the joke, right? When everyone knows the story, right? Like, how does that change people's behaviors? Can you actually think longer term? Can you actually invest more? Can you commit more? And so the exploration of on-chain gaming is also the exploration of on-chain communities, right? And on-chain culture. And so, we're really excited to kind of explore those things together with our community, with our players, and we're figuring it out together. And that, I think, attracts a certain type of builder to the space, a certain type of pioneer. And that's what sustains me. It's not about it's not interesting to like go and just build mobile games with like NFT rails. Like I find that incredibly uninteresting, uninspiring. But this idea of like creating these like on-chain like civilizations is very interesting.
Yeah, look, that's a very good way of putting it. And I can see that you're, deadly serious about this and really wanting to push this out and I guess pioneer the new frontier of what these on-chain communities, experiences, games, and so on can look like. And I think one of the demonstrations of that is I was, looking at who your backers are on your website, and serious crypto people, the kind of some of the leading thinkers in the space. You've got, Chris Dixon and the team at A16Z. You've got Balaji. Balaji, obviously a big thinker about what these kind of futures will look like. Diogo Monica from Anchorage. Naval, another crypto philosopher, if you like.
Naval.
Yeah, Naval.
Yeah.
And a great investor. So you've really got, as you say, some of the a world-class team who are backing you on the summit.
Yeah, and I'm extremely grateful for those folks too. I mean, it's funny because we stand on the shoulders of giants, and everyone you mentioned has really shaped my own thinking around this stuff, right? I'm just, I think like this is like kind of what's cool about this is that it's our opportunity, right? Like there's we have the tailwinds. I believe in the vision. I believe the technology's there. We've the one thing that what's been really interesting about what we've been doing is we're in a week from now we'll be 3 years old as a company. And our game Pirate Nation, which is our main product, it's our go-to-market with this idea. You'll play and you'll be like, oh, what is this? It's looks like a toy mobile game, but behind it, there's actually a lot of complexity, a lot of thought that went into it. But ultimately, I'm reaching out with a lot of these ideas, but the average player, they want something simple, right? But what's really cool is that when we started, there was a lot of unknown around is it even possible to make this work from a technological perspective, right? Like Ethereum, there's only so many transactions per second it could do, is constantly compared to the Visa network. block times are really slow, gas is expensive, the user experience is not great. And it's just like literally like one foot in front of the other, just like, okay, let's just take one step forward. Let's make it slightly better. Let's crack one more technical hurdle. And we just keep doing that again and again and again. So we launched the game, Pirate Nation, back in 2022. And the game is almost 2 years old. And, in that time, we've really, we've released an update to the game every week. We've done about 90 updates and just keep making it slightly better. Keep breaking down barriers. And now I have like a decent amount of confidence that it actually is possible to do, which is crazy. And if you see kind of the narrative around, when this podcast is recorded, this is November 2024, like around Ethereum L2s and L3s and block space and fragmentation, all this other stuff, like, yeah, there's tons of problems with Ethereum still. But the one thing that is true today that was not true, say, 3 or 4 years ago, was that there's a lot of block space. And block space allows us to do more complicated things on chain. It's like, it's kind of like bandwidth. Like when I think about the internet, it's like, why did YouTube launch in 2006 or like 2005? Like whenever YouTube launched, it kind of was around then, right? And it was like, oh, it was because it took that long for like broadband to become broadly available, such that enough people had access to higher bandwidth connections that streaming video then made sense. There's always this question that people ask of like, why now, right? And the answer to why now for this is that we have optimistic rollups, we have ZK rollups, we have sharding, we have interoperability between chains. All of these things enable something like this to exist now, right? And so my hope is that, we go and we crack it, but then we inspire a dozen other companies to do the same, dozen other projects to do the same. And we actually start to see the shift from the centralized web to the decentralized web. And that mission actually makes it very easy, despite the number of hard problems we need to tackle in order to keep going and keep iterating and pushing forward.
Yeah, well, someone needs to be first, and it's a tricky path, piloting a course through the murky world of blockchain gaming. But you guys are certainly pioneers. So tell us a little bit about Pirate Nation and how that's going. Mechanics of the game, how it works from an on-chain perspective, how you balance the kind of user needs of just wanting to have a simple, fun gameplay experience versus the complexities of an on-chain environment. There's kind of a lot to weigh up there, and I'm sure there's lots of learnings that you guys are learning as you go. But yeah, any way you want to kind of tackle that, Pirate Nation.
Yeah, so I talk about all these big ideas, right? Like online civilization, fine. Like this guy's he's read too many sci-fi books. But like, players don't care, right? We're in the attention economy. Like our competition is TikTok, Netflix, YouTube.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I think about, the experience we're delivering people, the reason we're going live with the game is because it's easy to pick up. And especially when we hide all the crypto stuff, like, okay, so you don't even realize you're playing crypto. Games are engaging. So my first company, we learned this lesson the hard way. It was like we had a virtual world. It was kind of like The Sims, right? And no one would stick around. They'd come in, they'd like build like a little home for themselves, and then they just... And it was only when we like took that same kind of template, we put game mechanics, in this case, building a farm, having to come back and water your crops, they die. Like basically creating these like game mechanics around it, like putting game features on top of it. Did the retention actually start to the people start to come back, right? And so when I think about what we're doing with Pirate Nation is we're giving people something to do as a solo experience, but then as they are playing their solo game, we're looping in other people, right? So Zynga, we call this the core loop, and then you have social loops, which intersect the core loop. And so when I think about someone trying to play, like if you go for someone who has no interest in crypto, no interest in any of this stuff at all, give them something fun to do, give them a world to engage in. and then start to layer in, as they're engaging this world, other players, a trading economy, guilds, player generated content, all of these other kind of bigger crypto features, right? The crypto doesn't really matter. People don't care about that. They care about like what it means for their kind of, what they get out of it. That's where people kind of stick around. So people come for the game, but they stay for the community, right? People start playing World of Warcraft because the game is fun, but they stick around because of their guild, right? And so when I think about like the onboarding of someone, the arc, someone going from kind of a, just a normal mobile phone user to someone who's like deeply engaged with even a DAO or something of that nature, and they may call it that, is you have to kind of like, it's over multiple sessions, right? And a lot of the things that people lead with in Web3, connect your wallet, all this other stuff, to me, those are all elder player things. Those are things that happen much later in the player journey. Until then, you're just engaging with the world that you find enjoyable. And then you go this deep down the rabbit hole as you want after that point. And so, for me, product success looks like you don't even realize you're engaging with these technologies at all. And actually, Polymarket's a really good example of this. No one realizes they're using a crypto app. They're just, betting on election outcomes, things like that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, and a great example. Well, that aside, though, do you want to just, anything that you like to talk about just in terms of the tech stack that your games run on? Because I can see Pirate Nation runs on Proof of Plays, Apex, and Boss Chains. So this is quite interesting. So obviously, to have any kind of on-chain game, you really do have to make sure that the underlying blockchain rails are optimized as much as possible. So you don't compromise that user experience. But as you've said, the whole idea is to eventually abstract that complexity away so that the end user doesn't need to worry about it. But a lot going on under the hood.
So basically the way to think about this is for Web 2, we've had decades of kind of like infrastructure innovation, right? Like Facebook, solved all these big scaling problems when they launched, and they had to like figure out how do you take a database and then put like 100 million users on it. Okay, well, it turns out you don't use one database, you use like multiple databases. Right? Oh, like rather than just talk to the database directly, you use this thing called Memcache. So you have like a caching layer in front of your database. So like these are like kind of like Web 2 innovations that allow like highly performant scaled websites to exist. But it took us like a really long time to get there as like the internet developed, right? We're basically speed running this stuff at Proof of Play for on-chain stuff. So the first thing we did was we built an on-chain database, which allows us to very easily put structured data on-chain and then quickly index it so that our clients can like read this stuff. So when you think about our tech stack, the first thing is that it's an on-chain database, right? The second thing is that it is we figured out how to actually take, again, blockchain's limited block space per chain. We had a chain, we started on Polygon, then we migrated to Arbitrum Nova, and then we migrated to our own application-specific chain, our own L3 called Proof of Play Apex. And we basically capped out on each of these platforms. One of the things that we had to solve from a user experience perspective is how to pay for gas for players so that they weren't like seeing bunch of pop-ups or had to like keep funding their account. And so we basically do gas sponsorship. And on a public blockchain, that's prohibitively expensive. So we had to move to our own chain. So in March, we did that with Apex. And then we started to scale the game, and we quickly hit the limit of what a single blockchain could support. So we knew that in order for us to keep scaling the game, we're going to have to actually split the player base across multiple chains. But the key thing here is that we still want it to feel like a single continuous world. And so the hard thing is, and there's only like one other game that's ever done this, and that's EVE Online, where they call it single shard, which is players are all playing in one world. Most other games, they put you on different server instances. In World of Warcraft, you're on server A or server B, and the players from these different servers, they never interact. They're basically isolated game worlds. we want to create a continuous game. I mean, that's one of the things that's interesting about the blockchain is that it's PvP and co-op all at once. And so in order to do that, we essentially had to solve a bunch of really hard technical complexities around separating players on different chains, but then having the chains talk to each other so that as players interact with each other, they don't even realize that they're interacting with someone on a completely different blockchain. So it's all invisible. So we came up with this concept of the multi-chain. So back in a couple months ago, we launched this thing. We launched a second chain called Proof of Play Boss. So now we have Apex and Boss, and these two chains talk to each other. And so you could be on Apex and I could be on Boss. I send you a token, and what's happening is rather than just doing a transfer, like a normal transfer, it's actually doing an invisible bridge, right? It knows that you're on the other chain, and it's just quietly doing it. So from a user experience perspective, you don't even realize that that bridge is happening. It's seamless to you. And this is the experience. I mean, everyone talks about this for Ethereum, this like kind of invisible bridging. We have it working. In fact, we're probably like one of the few projects, period, that has it working. And so in a lot of ways, we're like, kind of driving the, we're kind of tip of the spear in a lot of ways in terms of UX and user experience for this stuff. The other thing too is these two chains are now accounting for about, I mean, the number fluctuates, but it's like something like 40 or 50% of all gas burned in the Ethereum ecosystem. So there's some websites, if you go to like rollup.wtf, you can see a list of all the Ethereum chains, and you'll see that the top two of the top three chains are us. And we're just like, because that's like active usage, right? So we're really pushing we have real users. We have real activity. You can play the game today. You can try this stuff out. A lot of the crypto stuff is hidden. You don't realize a lot of these things are happening. It's really a unique set of things that are coming together at once.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, do you want to just bring us up to speed then with the, I guess, the updates to Pirate Nation? Because I think it's Pirate Nation Season 3 right now. So I think I'm sure there's some new features there. And also at the same time, but just, you mentioned that roll up dashboard. I think there's a June dashboard as well. So just any kind of, high level metrics that you can speak to that show, I guess just, proof of concept. People are playing this and
sure,
the directional that we're heading.
Yeah. So Pirate Nation just launched Season 3 last week. It started. And it's a brand new meta for the game. We completely overhauled the crafting system. We made it much deeper, drafting upon our experience as MMO players and designers. Pirate Nation kind of has averaged around 60,000 players a day for the last couple months, which is amazing. We've done tens of millions of dollars of secondary transactions. Players have spent like 3+ million pirate token to buy in-game items, skins, and gems, and all these other things. So players it's a very healthy economy. Players are engaging. They are playing our various game modes. We have a secondary marketplace where they can trade with each other, people constantly buying and selling there. We have over 100,000 people in our Discord. And then, in June, the Pirate Nation Foundation launched the Pirate Token. That was airdropped. And of people who claimed, I think, I need to see the exact number now, but it was something like between 70 and 80% staked, right? And so that's a really strong commitment to the Pirate Nation ecosystem. It's a really strong commitment to the Proof of Play ecosystem. And, our players are in it for the long run. It's funny that if they listen to this, they'll be like, oh, he's been talking these points for a while. But the reality is that if there's one thing that we do is that we ship, that we say something and then we just do it, right? And I think that credibility has been hard won, kind of like week after week, release after release. And anyone who just pays a little bit of attention to us, joins our Discord, looks at our patch notes, goes through our history, will see, that this is we try to under promise and over deliver, and that's our MO, and we're just gonna keep doing it until we kind of reach the vision that we're going for. And so season 3 is a good step in the right direction, but it's just a milestone, where it's not the end point for us.
No, absolutely not. I certainly get that sense, Amit. So I get the idea that you're more just, you're building out the tools, the tooling, the infrastructure, the proof of play engine, whatever you want to call it, because is the big idea, is it not you going to effectively open source this with, I guess, the intention of making it easier for other developers, other teams, other gaming studios to help build out Web3, an on-chain gaming universe, and take more and more people on-chain. So just whatever you want to share in terms of what that kind of roadmap looks like and how long it takes and so on, please.
Sure. So our contracts are already open source. They have been since day one. We are open sourcing things kind of as it makes sense to. Our primary objective is to ensure that Pirate Nation is a success. That's like first and foremost. And so like we know that if we open source and we start supporting other people, like we want to be able to like put our weight behind it, like we don't want to just like open up a bunch of stuff and be like, okay, like good luck. There's a little bit of like, hey, like, like we want to like support our developer community, of which like there's some crazy people in our community that have already gone like kind of reverse engineered a bunch of our stuff and like have started to build on top of Pirate Nation, which is a super strong sign given just like how bad like our documentation and so on was, like how much upside we have there. And so so there's definitely some really cool projects being built already. And I think one of the cool things about being fully on chain is it's permissionless. Like all of the event data is there, all the data for all the players is there. So you can actually just build products on top of Pirate Nation. So, there's a company that went and like basically built guilds. There's no concept of guilds in Pirate Nation yet, but they want to build guilds on top of the game, and basically, they were able to build on top of the game, create a competition between guilds, and use the information within the game to score how each guild is doing without needing any information from us or permission from us. Like it's this idea of being able to mod, to extend, to essentially like, it's almost like DeFi Legos, right? DeFi building blocks. It's the ability to do that for game features. And so like, and when I think about the potential reach of this, it's not just games, because like I said, it's just on-chain data, right? So it's possible that someone can go and build non-gaming applications as well. So we're really thinking about this as like kind of composable consumer. Like if you think about like there was like DeFi building blocks, like this is like basically consumer application building blocks, right? The ability for people to very quickly piece together like consumer applications using what's been built before. And so we very much intend to keep open sourcing things, keep releasing our technology, especially now that we have like more proof points that it works in production and works at certain scales. Like nothing is quite as good for your tech, or quite as good marketing for your tech, than like actual successful applications that you built yourself. So like, examples of this are like Amazon building Amazon.com before releasing AWS, or like Epic Games building like Unreal and Gears of War before releasing Unreal Engine, right? Like those things, like their own products became marketing for their technology. And so if Pirate Nation is a success, I'm pretty confident that like there will be demand for our technology, right? Yep. And so, that's been our approach.
Yeah, makes sense. Just to finish off this part of the podcast, would love to just get, I guess, maybe your kind of wider thoughts on, I don't know, like Web3 gaming, metaverse, NFTs, kind of all of that stuff, just in general, after sort of going through, a couple of hype cycles, and, maybe the attention isn't quite there in terms of on-chain gaming right now, or maybe it is, but just how you see it evolving, where you see that kind of next wave of adoption coming from, and how fast it takes, or just your thoughts.
So it's funny. I spent a lot of time thinking about the metaverse, and I've like I'm pretty bearish on the idea generally, only because when I think about human communication, right? Like I don't want to like have to like put on a VR headset, walk over to you just to have a conversation. I'll also text you on my phone. Like humans are inherently lazy creatures, and we want like whatever itch to be scratched in the cheapest, quickest way possible. And so, like, if I want to feel connection, like I'm going to do the cheapest, quickest thing to feel that, whether that's picking up a phone or texting you or whatever it may be. You do lose some fidelity in connection, right? That way. So there is like some value that, like, if I'm like on video chat, I get like more of a fidelity, I get more facial cues. And so I do think that like, but the idea that that is the only way to communicate is not, is I don't think will work. And then when I think about like kind of collaborative universes, like Epic is building, Fortnite is interesting because people are like, Fortnite's a great game, but that's not why people go into it every day after day. It's because that's where their friends are. It's become a third place. It's become the coffee shop. It's become your friend's couch basement, right? It's become a replacement for your hangout. Is how you're doing the digital hangout. And, I think, but in the long run, when you think about collaborative building spaces, there's got to be this idea that there's no true owner of it, right? You look at something like a Burning Man and look at the culture that's been created there, and it's the reason it's different than like a Coachella or these like kind of some of these other music festivals that are produced is that it's a collaborative thing that the community comes together to build, right? And so really, when you think about the potential of what could create here, there has to be this idea of the commons, this idea of like, we're coming together to create something, and there's no one person that controls it. There's no one that can rug pull it. There's no one that can turn it off. So the closest thing we have to a digital commons is Ethereum, right? And it's decentralized. It's the closest thing we have to humanity's like actual like virtual time capsule. The reason a CryptoPunk or an NFT is worth something is because it's the most permanent form of art we have in existence. Physical art can be destroyed. Digital art, even if it's on a bunch of USBs, can be lost. But digital art that's on chain can be continually replicated, can be continually perpetuated. It can continue to exist as long as a single node in that network is continuing to operate. So the reason that CryptoPunk is worth something is because it's the equivalent of digital caveman art, right? And so when I think about NFTs and the art history, and like an NFT to me is like, it's funny that it's got such a negative connotation because it's just a wrapper. It's a wrapper that points to something. So of course this thing is going to be like, of course we're going to have digital assets. You don't call it an NFT, call it something else. The term doesn't matter. It's the idea of taking something that exists and just like creating a digital record of it, and allowing it to be exchanged, pointed at, and having a history of provenance. So based on that, like, what is like the actual virtual world? And I would argue it's the Ethereum block space, and then everything else is just a view into that, right? So for example, there's this concept of the map is not the territory, right? Just because you have a picture of something doesn't mean it represents ground truth. So when we think about like a virtual world, it's like, what's truth? Is the pixels on the screen, or is it the state that defines what's actually in the world itself? This is the bits in the database. When you think about an NFT, a piece of digital art, is it the representation of the monkey, or is it the bits that say this is how this thing previously existed, and this is how it transferred state, and this is where it was put into existence? So when I think about like the actual metaverse, the true like virtual world, I think the Ethereum blockchain is it. And then whether we represent that as text, as images, as a 3D world, as a VR world, whatever it may be, those are all just views into the ground truth. So the territory in this case is the data that's on chain. That's the state of the universe, and that is all I was going to say.
Fantastically articulated. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Look, let's finish up this part of the podcast, and just do so by telling people where they can go just to, keep up to date with what you guys are doing at Proof of Play. And if people want to try out Pirate Nation, if they're not already doing so, what is the easiest way for them to do so? What should they do? Where should they go?
Yeah, so you can play the game at piratenation.game. Follow us on socials. We're at Proof of Play, at Pirate Nation. I'm on X. We have our Discord. You can follow us there. We engage directly. We'd love to see you kind of in the Infinite Isles, and it's never been a better time to be a pirate.
Yes, indeed. All right. Links are in the show notes as well, folks. But Amit, it's time to finish up the podcast, and we do that by running you through the very famous Crypto Conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm just going to run some questions at you, Amit. I just want you to give me kind of quick, snappy answers, hot take style, if you like. Let's see what you have to say. Question one is, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
I'm 50% Bitcoin, 50% Ethereum ecosystem.
Yep. Hey, makes sense. Nuanced answer. I like it. What would you say then is your firmest conviction crypto opinion, Amit?
Ethereum is the future of on-chain compute.
I love it. All right. Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. Sure, you're very familiar with that kind of thinking, being a builder and blockchain. 10 years is a long time, though. But so anything you like here, Ethereum, Web3, gaming, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
I think we have a fully digital civilization in 10 years' time.
Nice. Digital states. All right. Another way of thinking about this, of course, is sci-fi author William Gibson famously said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
I think people are still under the impression that blockchain has no actual utility other than financial speculation. And that is not our experience. That's not the truth that we are living day in and day out of play. We have real players engaging with each other in meaningful ways, creating meaningful stories with each other, getting meaning out of the game universe today.
I love it. Couldn't have said it better. Very well said indeed. Brings us nicely to the final question, which is, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
Man, that's the hardest question you've asked me.
I know.
I mean, the one that's inspired this particular company is the Culture series, Book 2, Player of Games.
Excellent. And look, that's a great way to end the show. Yeah. I guess just close it out by, again, Amit, telling us where people can find you on X, and again, just shout out the Pirate Nation websites and so on.
Yeah, so piratenation.game, play the game, at Pirate Nation, at Proof of Play, at Amit on X, and proofofplay.com for our company website. Yeah, come check us out. Come say hi on our Discord. We're around. We'd love to hear from you. It's never been a better time to be a pirate.
Go the Pirates. Yes, indeed. Fly the flag. Thank you so much, Amit. All the best, and bye for now.
Yeah, thank you.